welcome back to Genuine Love Podcast. Today, it's just me, Virginia, and I have my sister, Masey, on the podcast.
Hello.
I'm really excited because she's awesome and my best friend, so you get to hear her today share her story. So if you don't know who she is, her name is Masey McLain, now Stanley.
Yes.
Been married for over a year now.
Yep.
Which is crazy because I feel like it's gone by really fast. I feel like y'all just got married. So Masey and I are 2.5 years apart. So we grew up, really close in age. We were in middle school. Were we in middle school? We were never in middle school at the same time. We were in high school at the same time.
Yeah.
We were
only
in
high school.
We were in college at the same time.
Yep.
So we
every
kind of got
time
to
one
do
year. Like when I was a freshman, you
yeah,
were a senior.
I was always a senior when you were a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like and we have a brother in between us. So
yep.
We were, man, poor mom. Mom was pregnant for a long time.
I just remember we would always go through, like we would be super close and then we would fight.
Oh, yeah.
Fight hard.
Yeah.
And then, like I went so far as to, I would mark the clothes in my closet of like, do not touch this, do not touch this. And
but then she would steal my clothes.
So,
but then whenever I would go to steal her clothes, she had these Post-it notes.
Yeah, but see, I was smart. I would literally create Post-it notes and stick them on the ones that I knew she would go after. And then she would go after those ones.
I was so mad. And I would just take the Post-it note off and put the clothes on.
Okay, but to be fair, I'm number 3. And I feel like we have a big family. Like, we're 6 in all. And I would even, like, hide.
6
I don't know if
including
you
our
knew,
parents.
Yeah, our parents. I don't know if you ever did this, but I would always hide my food, too. And I would label it all. I had to. Well,
that wasn't because of me. That was because of our brothers.
Yes. Yes, very true. But even now, married, I feel like I have to do that.
Do you really? Does Caleb try to steal your food?
He will go at, like, one of my pet peeves. This is really, like, probably really dumb, but like if I have a plate of food and he, like, I can't stand when he looks like wants to eat my food, especially before his is done. Like I just don't like it. And you know why? Because growing up, Marty and Steven would be eating his food and he would reach across while he's eating the same thing I am and eat my food, and it would just drive me insane.
Yeah.
So now being married, I'm like, hey, I have my food, you have your food. But as soon as I'm done, I want to share. But I just don't like to share until then. I don't know if that's bad.
You could just do what Marty used to do and spit on his food.
Oh, yeah.
So we wouldn't eat it.
In a big family, you gotta find ways.
He would look at us and literally mark his food by spitting on it. So we couldn't have any.
No one wanted his food.
No one wanted that.
Just kidding.
Yuck. So gross. And then whenever he went to college, Mom and Dad's grocery bill literally split in half.
I remember that. Yeah.
Because he ate so much food.
Yeah. When me and Marty lived together in college, and I remember I would go get like a pack of Oreos, and I would come home and they would all be gone. He would eat the entire pack of Oreos in one sitting.
He's a monster.
Poor Marty.
And we're talking about it, but his job, he's a personal trainer.
Oh, yeah. He's the most fit person I've ever known.
That's what he does for a living.
And he's really good at his job.
Things that he can eat. Goodness.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
I can't eat a whole thing of Oreos.
I mean, I can, but I pay for it. Like,
that's what I mean.
I gained 5 pounds
it's not
immediately.
Just a flippant thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, Masey is going to share some of her story today. She has, let's see, you started working in the entertainment industry when you were what, 15?
15. Mm-hmm.
So when she was 15, she started working in the entertainment industry. So I just kind of wanted her to share some of her story with that, with working in the entertainment industry, with being out in California, meeting her now husband, Caleb, who we love, and where she is now and what she's doing now, what she and Caleb are doing together right now in their town, the town that they're living in.
Yeah, so I started in the entertainment industry when I was 15. But before then, I started doing plays, and I think that love started because Mom, like growing up, well, first of all, she was like a big entertainer. Like she was always doing musical theater, and she was like won all these national competitions, tap dancing growing up. Like she just has entertainment in her blood.
Musical theater major.
Yeah, musical theater major. And then I think me and you, like we both loved being in plays. And so that's where the love started. And then I remember when I was 15, I wondered what it would be like to try to go the route of TV and film. And I tried it, and I loved it. And I actually loved the TV and film route way better than I loved being on stage. I
Which I was,
didn't-
I mean,
about
I
to
never
say,
tried TV and film, but I love being on stage. But
you
I would
were
have been
so-
terrible on
Yeah,
film.
but I remember watching you on stage, and I was like, it was like natural, like big, you know, like voice and you know, motions and all the things. To me, I love TV and film because it's internal, and
Yeah,
it's like
you're good at
the
it,
camera
yeah.
is just like right in front of your face, and you don't. It's like the camera catches everything. Like all you have to do is feel and be there and connect and kind of a thing. But stage, you have to be animated and all this kind of stuff, which I feel like you and Mom are like the pros at, but which I just loved. But I just remember feeling more at home with TV and film. And so I started at 15, and the first thing I ever did was a commercial with the Jonas Brothers.
Oh yeah, I
which
forgot
was
about that.
so fun.
And
that
I was
my
convinced.
first job.
I was like, "You're gonna marry Nick.
Oh yeah,
God put you on this commercial so you can marry Nick."
I do remember being really excited when I met them because we didn't know it was with them. They just told us they were like some, you know, celebrities are gonna walk in and this is who the commercial you're gonna be doing it with. But they didn't tell us because they wanted our reactions to be genuine. So they walked in and I was just like, oh my gosh, it's the Jonas Brothers, you know, just so excited.
I hate that Jensen's not here because she's in love with the Jonas Brothers.
Oh my gosh. So I actually, they did something when the commercial started. They were like, out of all of you, who wants to sing for them? And no one raised their hand. And I was like, I'll sing for them. So I literally, like, they gave me a microphone and I sang one of their songs. And like the whole time they were just like, yeah, that's awesome. You know, it's like a commercial.
Yeah. It was like the karaoke, like,
yes, it was like karaoke
video game or something,
exactly.
right?
Yep, karaoke video game. So that was really, really fun. And then I honestly just kept auditioning and auditioning. And it was a roller coaster of a ride. I almost quit. I mean, time and time and
So
time
many
again.
times.
Just because it's rejection all the time. And especially when you're going through all the stuff you do in your teens, like it's just not a comfortable place to be, to like stand in front of people all the time and give it your all and then be told no so many times.
It's a lot of
It's
rejection
vulnerable.
for that age.
Yeah, exactly. And and I was also trying to figure out, especially when I started to get older and go to college, trying to figure out what I was doing with my life, and I had no idea. And I remember looking around, and everybody else had these stable, like, careers paths. Like, they were, like, going to be a nurse, going to be a teacher. And I just remember thinking, like, what am I doing? Like, I'm going to be an entertainer? Like, what? And there really is no like, clean cut. I don't mean clean cut. I mean, like, there's no, like, A plus B equals C path to get there.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of other jobs, you go to school, you get this, and then you move your way up, and it's just very, like, laid out for you. But even when people tell me, like, now they want to be an actor or something like that, you know, I ask them, like, do you actually love it? And, like, do you really feel like you're called to it? Because if you're not, like, it will chew you up and spit you out.
Yeah, because I feel like some people think it's like this thing where you go and you get your dream role immediately.
Yeah, and you're on the red
and
carpet
then-
all the time.
Yeah.
Like, well, because a lot of people, especially with social media, they just see, like, the pictures, and it looks like this just, like, glamour show. And it's like, oh, my gosh, they don't see the hours and hours and hours that's put in for one audition. And the statistics of actually booking an audition, they say, is 1 out of every 45 times auditioning. And that, I mean, it's just, if you know, they used to tell us all the time, if you knew the statistics, you would never act again. You know, like, if you knew actually how many girls you were up against. But my confidence in it the whole time, really, the Lord just had to make it that He'd called me to it, and He really wanted to. This was the way and the avenue that He wanted to use me. And I mean, there's so many times and stories when He literally just, I felt like He stood in front of me when I tried to get out of it. So I was always very thankful.
Yeah. What was the one story? I remember it had something to do with Jordan and Nicole.
Oh my gosh. It was, I think, the fleece. So I was doing a Priscilla Shire Bible study in college. And in college for me was like the time when I just fell in love with the Lord. And like, because I was off on my own. And, you know, just like when you're off on your own, there's something special about that time with the Lord. Like, I definitely had a relationship with God when I was in high school, and that was such groundwork. And like, I mean, just like a really pivotal time for me. But also college just felt like I was falling in love with Him. Anyways, I was doing this Bible study, and it was on Gideon. And Gideon, you know, has a story where God has called him to something, but he keeps doubting. And he, you know, as many times as God tells him, hey, this is going to happen and you're going to do this, he's like, okay, well, I need a sign. And he kept laying out fleece, or he laid out a fleece, and he said, okay, if you want me to do this, then I'll know it's you, like make the fleece wet in the morning on the ground. And that ends up happening. But even after that happens, he keeps asking for more signs. And I was just in a time with the Lord where I was really asking for those kinds of signs. And I was like, God, I need a sign. Like, I am going to be Gideon. Like, and I truly was like, you know what? Like, the word of God is living and active, and I know it's true. And I want to just like step into it. And I was just so kind of bold, I guess, with the Lord of just, I want to be Gideon in this, you know, situation, which honestly, looking back, I'm not proud of, because Gideon doubted so much. But I was like, okay, God, if this is from you, I'm laying out my fleece. This is it. And I looked at my two friends, and Nicole was one of them. And I was like, if this is from the Lord, like when I go to this audition, if the casting director looks at me and says, do not get out of acting, then I won't get out. But the thing is, casting directors never say that.
Yeah.
Like, they look at you, you do your audition, and they're like, okay, cool,
They
bye.
basically don't give encouragement,
yeah, they don't,
right?
You usually don't get anything. Like, you have no idea how well you did, usually. So I went to this audition, and I took my two friends there, and I asked them to sit outside of the room. And that's another thing. You never take your friends to auditions. Yeah. Like, that's just a big no.
Yeah.
You just don't. And the casting director was even like, oh, you brought your friends. Like, and it's so funny because you walk in a room. Yeah, that's cute. You walk in a room and you see about 15 other girls that look like you. And you're like, okay, there's clearly a type that they're going for here. And then I have my two friends, and I put them outside of the room, and they're probably like, what the heck is going on? And I go into do the audition. I do it. I do the very best I can. And then I'm like, okay, I'm done. And he was like, thank you, Masey, so much. And I go to the door, and it's so the Lord, even the timing. I have the door like almost open, or like twisted and like pulled it. And he was like, Masey, wait. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, don't quit. Like, it's going to be a really good year for you. Don't quit. And I was like, oh my goodness. And so I opened the door, and my two friends' eyes are literally like popping out of their head because they heard what he said. And I literally said he had to say that. And it's so funny because I'm just imagining, you know, these three girls in this audition room, and we're like, Gideon, like the police, you know, and we're just freaking out. And he's like, okay, thank you, bye. But then very soon after that is when I'm Not Ashamed stuff happened. And the auditions started for that.
And so, I'm Not Ashamed is a movie.
Yeah, I'm Not
based
Ashamed.
on Rachel Joy Scott.
Yeah.
And you can explain that.
Yeah, I'm Not Ashamed is, it's based on the life of Rachel Joy Scott, who was the first person killed in the Columbine shooting. But it's not a movie on the shooting, it's a movie on her life. Like, it's all based on her journals. And that was the first lead role in a film I'd ever done.
That was in theaters.
That was in theaters.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's so cool. Like, the Lord just, I mean, that's even a whole nother story. That role, like, he had just called me to it. And that, like, whole situation happened very soon after, you know, my Gideon moment. So,
which if you would have quit, you wouldn't.
If I would have quit, I never would have done it. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today.
Right.
But I just think it was so. I always think back on it, just the kindness of God, and even in my weakness and my doubt, because there had been times when he'd confirmed me to stay in the entertainment industry, but I asked him in his mercy to show me something, and he did. And I just always think that was so kind of him. Just because he didn't have to do that, you know? Yeah. And it was very specific. I just love when God does such specific things, because it's just like, it just reminds you again, like, how much he sees you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Okay, so before we get into how you met Caleb, and then where you are right now and where y'all are together, can you tell the driver's license story on the subject of rejection?
Oh my gosh. This is fun because these are also, like, this is some of the stuff I never get to talk about. Oh my gosh.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I failed my driver's license test.
3 times, right?
3? No, 2. It was
2 times.
I failed it 2 times, but in my defense.
But the third time you almost failed.
The third time I almost failed. In my defense, I had to take that test in a giant van.
Yeah.
Like, my mom used to drive this spaceship of a van.
I also used to drive that.
Yeah.
That was like my 16-year-old car.
Yeah. And that thing was huge. I mean, that van was massive. And I remember showing up to the test, and the lady was like, "Honey, is this what you're taking the test in?" And I was like, "Yes, ma'am. This is all we have." And she was like, "Oh my!" Like it was already like a fail from the start. And to be also, I passed with flying colors. I just want to redeem myself a little bit here. What is it called? Your learners?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did very well.
I failed that one.
See, I got home and was so proud of myself. And then
yeah, rubbed it in my face.
But I remember being so torn up about failing the driver's license. I don't know if you remember this, but you and Dad were in the car, and I was just so scared because I was like, I failed, and because I still had my learners, I could still drive y'all, and I drove on the wrong side of the road. I like pulled out.
It got in your head.
It got so in my head that I was like, I'm a terrible driver, and I was pulling out on a 4-lane like highway.
That was terrifying.
And I pulled out, and you and Dad are all of a sudden like,
and we were like, praise Jesus, she didn't pass her test.
And Dad was like, okay, we got a lot to learn. And I remember though just being so defeated and crying, and I was like, I remember thinking, I'm never gonna drive. Like, I am never going to drive. And Dad told me one day, he sat me down, he was like, Masey, we were driving, and he was like, Masey, I want you to look around at everyone driving. He was like, if they can pass their test, you can. He was like, think about all the people that have their license. Like, if they can do it, I know you can do it. And I was like, okay, yeah. So I went back and in the van again. And again, the lady was like, honey, this is not a good thing. And I get in the driver's spot. I hit the cones when I'm parallel parking, which is funny because now I'm a pro parallel parker because living in Los Angeles. Oh my gosh. I can parallel park anywhere. Living in Los Angeles, you have to parallel park all the time in very tight spaces. But anyways, the lady said I didn't stop long enough at the stop signs, and I hit the cones, and that means I killed people, all kinds of stuff. And I was like, those are not people, ma'am. Those are very short people if those are people. Like, those are like literally 2 feet high.
And they're orange.
Yeah. These are little tiny orange like people. And I was like, nowhere near it. They need to be taller. But
so Cass, you failed a second time.
Okay, sorry, I failed the second time. And then she almost failed me again, which I think for no reason, the third time. And I
no reason.
I just thought I did stop long enough at a stop sign, and I might have hit the cones, but again, when are cones behind you? Like, when are cones in the road?
Oh,
you know?
Gosh.
Anyway, so I looked at her, and I was just like, she was like, well, she was asking me about life, and I was like, it's a lot of rejection. Like, in my line of work, it is mostly no's, and it's pretty hard at times. Like, it's especially being my age, and, it's just, I get told no every day. And she was like, oh my gosh. And I really pulled on her heartstrings, which, do I regret? No. Because I got my license. And it was true. I was facing a lot of
so bad
rejection.
For you that she gave
felt
you your
so
license.
bad for me. She gave me my license, and I passed by like 1 point. But you know what? I got my license.
So there you go.
There we go. That's the fun story of my driver's license.
If you are facing rejection, just pull on somebody's heartstrings to get what you want.
I mean, it was true. I wasn't lying.
You're a pretty good driver now.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I feel like I drive better in cities than I drive in like neighborhoods, or like than I drive in like parking lots. Like, I just feel like I'm really aggressive. Like, I know how to drive on like a huge
living
highway.
in LA, I guess you'd have to.
Yeah, you have to. But yeah, so
that sounds terrible. Okay, so you did I'm Not Ashamed.
Yeah.
Which then what happened after I'm Not Ashamed? I don't remember.
So, it's so crazy. So right before I'm Not Ashamed came out, like a bunch of people almost like hyped me up of like, are you ready for your career to explode and all this kind of stuff. Like, it was a whole thing where they were just like, be ready, like, this is the beginning and all this kinds of stuff. And I remember actually, and I've told her this, Meredith Andrews, which you know who that is. I like got to have lunch with her one day, and this was like right before I'm Not Ashamed, and she actually told me, and this was just so the Lord. She said she was in a situation where an album was about to come out or something. A lot of people were like, oh my gosh, this is going to happen and everything. Mm-hmm. And it didn't happen the way she thought, but the Lord just used it in a different way. And she was like, if God does that, like, let him do what he's going to do. Like, don't listen to everyone. Like, you just, whatever the Lord lays in front of you, he has you. And I remember she was one of the only ones that kind of braced me. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened. Like, after I'm Not Ashamed came out, like the response was incredible. I mean, I still get messages all the time just saying what God's doing with that movie, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. And it's, I mean, just the most special thing. But right after that, it was like 3 years, nothing happened.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't take off. I wasn't, like, the movie didn't get wasn't the widespread, huge hit that everyone kind of anticipated. It like has become that in a way, like even internationally, like it's just doing so well. But it wasn't like this overnight, like, oh my gosh, that did amazing, and now you're gonna get to do whatever you want. So it was like 3 years of I was just kind of like, what do I do now? But it was so cool because I feel like those 3 years were just like really refining for me. And I remember I went through a lot of stuff personally that I had to really deal with. And I had to have that time. It was crucial, especially before I went out to Los Angeles. And I got to speak at a lot of churches and a lot of places, and God kind of birthed in me this love for teaching.
Yeah,
and
which I'm Not Ashamed kind of propelled, right?
Yes, so I'm Not Ashamed was the vehicle that churches would ask me to come speak.
Right.
And so it was like a different kind of ministry than I anticipated. I just didn't think that would happen. But again, I wouldn't trade it for anything, and God used it to prepare me for so much. And then, I actually even went back to college during that time.
Oh,
and I
yeah,
graduated,
you did.
it just felt off-kiltering. Like, it feels so off-kiltering when you feel like you're about to take off or something, and then all of a sudden you're back and you're just like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And then I'm in college and I'm like, oh, it feels weird to be in college again. Like, I left all this for entertainment. So it was just very off-kiltering, but it was so purposeful.
Yeah.
And then I actually, about, I guess, 3 years later, after I'm Not Ashamed, I started feeling like I was supposed to move out to Los Angeles. And one of the girls that was in I'm Not Ashamed, her name's Taylor. It's so cool because when we were filming, she told me randomly, she was like, hey, if you ever come out to Los Angeles, like, you can live with me. And we barely knew each other. And I just always thought it was so cool that she said that, because I was like, that's really big for you to offer me to come live with you. And we don't really hardly know each other.
And when she said live with me, she meant live in my room with me.
Oh, yeah, me and Taylor. So
that makes it even more of like an offer.
Oh, yeah, like and that's just who she is.
It wasn't even like live in my guest room. It's like, hey, come share a room with me.
Yeah, which is, I mean, who does that?
I know, yeah.
But that's just Taylor. She's, I mean, the most giving and like heart, really. And so I called her and I was like, hey, is that offer still on the table? Like, I think I'm coming out there. And she was like, oh my gosh, yeah, totally. And I came out there and I moved in, and we just became super, super close. And we actually now work together. Man, and I hate when people say this, like, I can't say what I'm working on, but it's true. Like, I actually have signed things where I can't say what I'm working on.
But it's really exciting.
But it's I mean, it's probably something, it's one of the most exciting things one of the things I've ever been more excited. Let me repeat that. I've never been more excited, I think, about a project that I'm, yes, I'm Not Ashamed, but that I'm able to work on. And anyways, and that's something I'm getting to do with Taylor. And it's just kind of full circle. And my time in LA, I just learned a ton of being out in Los Angeles. And, it is a dog-eat-dog world. But it also made me sharper. Like, I got to take acting classes and out there, and it just like kind of upped everything. Like, you can tell, like, if you want to like work with the big dogs, you got to go where they are and train with them, kind of a thing. So I loved being out there, and it was it was really cool time. And honestly, I moved out there, and pretty quickly after, I booked The Baxters, which is a show. I actually told my manager when I found out they were making a TV show based on Karen Kingsbury's book series. I called him and I was like, listen, I have to audition for this. I was like, you don't understand.
We grew up reading these books.
Like inhaling them. Oh, yeah.
Our friends used to make fun of us.
Oh, yeah. Like, these people were real to me.
Yeah.
Like, so real. And so when I found out they were making a series, I was like, oh, my goodness. But the timing of me going out to LA, if I wasn't living in Los Angeles, I would not have auditioned for that role. Like, they would never have called me in.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I wouldn't have had a manager, like, all kinds of things. So the timing was just beyond perfect, and I ended up booking my favorite character in her in the Baxter series. So that was just, again, another God thing. And then I've been working on that for the past, I guess, 2 years.
Yeah.
And we are still waiting to see where that lives. But I do know, I think everyone would be very pleased with what it is.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it.
Yeah.
I want to see this thing.
I know. But it's going to be worth it. It's been a blast to work on. So
yeah. And then so backing up to before you moved to LA, it was a rough time like in your life, and then you moved to LA and you are out speaking at a conference, right? In like January when you met Caleb for the very first time.
Oh yeah. So oh man, I love this story. So right before I moved out to LA, I spoke at a conference in Atlanta, and Caleb was speaking there too. And it's funny because he actually was going to reach out to me like leading up to the conference, and he just every single time felt like he wasn't supposed to.
Because he had heard about you or what?
He knew of me, and people started to tell him like, hey, Masey's single, like all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we knew of each other, but we didn't know each other. But he just felt like it wasn't time. And it's funny because anyone asking me on a date in that time, I said no.
Yeah.
Like anyone, I was like, sorry, not dating. And then me and Caleb met at the conference and got to hang out and stuff. And I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, he's really cute. And he was just amazing. And gosh, I'm trying to think even what happens next. So then about a few days later after the conference, he asked me on a date, and I was like, I'm so sorry, I'm moving to Los Angeles. Like, sorry. And so he was like, okay.
So this was right before
This
you were
was
about
literally
to move.
right before I moved.
Okay.
So, and he was like, okay. And I remember, like, he was just like, all right, no, that's totally fine. Like, I remember thinking, like, oh, he didn't care. Like, no big deal. And I was like,
didn't know him yet.
Oh, I didn't know his personality yet, that he is the most persistent person you will ever meet in your entire life, truly. It's part of, like, his gifting. So I flew out to LA, and he would just, like, text me or call me randomly just to check on me and how I was doing. And one day I remember I went on a date in Los Angeles because I was like, okay, I'm gonna date. Like I'm gonna go on a date out here and just see how it works. And he called me that night after the date, which is really funny because that actually happened with Mom and Dad. Dad ended up calling Mom when she was on a date. So Caleb did the same thing.
Mom ditched her date.
Yeah, Mom ditched her date and talked to Dad, which is
that poor guy.
But hey, we're here.
Well, he's not our dad, so.
So, but Caleb called me after the date, and I was like, yeah. He was like, how was your day? And I was like, I went on a date. You know, it was great. And I was just like, I mean, I could date. Like, we're not a thing.
Yeah.
And he flew out. I think it was the next day. Like, literally, I remember him saying, like, oh, you're dating. Like, oh, like, okay, how was it? Like,
I'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. So it was a few days away. Valentine's Day was a few days away.
He flies from Atlanta to LA.
Atlanta. He told me on Valentine's Day leading up to it, he was like, I have a business meeting on the February 14th. Do you mind picking me up from the airport? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then I remember in my mind thinking, okay, this is Valentine's Day. Like, what is he doing this on purpose and whatever? And he was just like, oh yeah, I just need to like be out there. And I was like, okay. So I picked him up from the airport, and he had an entire day planned. Like he literally flew out for the day of Valentine's.
Which is so
and it
funny.
was and he told me later, he was like, I was so nervous because I was like, what if this doesn't work? He was like, what if we don't click, or like this isn't? But he was like, I had to do it. Like I had to, come out there. And he says from that very day, like he knew we were going to get married.
No.
Which is so sweet. But
like after y'all hung out that
yes,
day.
Yeah, like after we were there together. So he had like a whole day in Malibu planned. We went to the beach all day, went to dinner. Like it was literally like straight off of a movie. And the next day though, I remember I woke up and we went to, we met at Chipotle, I think, which was like near his hotel that he had gotten. Like I met him there, and I told him, I was like, hey, I'm here, you're there, this isn't gonna work. Like I was like, I don't think this is like, God's gonna have to move mountains for us to be together, because I know I'm supposed to be here. And it was like, it was so sad. Like we both, I remember, left like so just like, I mean, it was heartbreaking kind of, because we just had something so like special. And then I remember like watching the planes like go, like it was literally like I felt like I was in a movie. And
you wrote a song about it.
I wrote a song about it. If you want to hear it, it's called Malibu, Me and You. It's about me and Caleb.
On Masey McLain EP.
Surprise. Yeah. And then, Caleb, he was like, I was like, I think it's best if we, just don't talk all the time. Like, if we're not together, I just don't think we should do that. And, of course, Caleb gives it a week, and then he starts texting and calling me again. And then from there on, he just kept flying out. I don't know how much that man spent on plane tickets and hotels, but he flew out so much. And then he proposed to me 8 months later.
Yep, he sure did. Well, and whenever y'all first started dating, I remember thinking, like, this isn't going to work. Like, I didn't want you to get your heart. We got in the biggest fight of our lives. To say, me and Masey my sister hung up on me.
We're not well during that time.
I was so mad at her.
I did hang up on you.
You did hang up.
Because
I was like, Masey, why? Why are you doing this? You cannot get in a relationship with this person.
Kind of guy you've always dated.
I judged Caleb pretty hard. I thought he was somebody he wasn't.
She thought she had never met him, she was going off of my track record.
This hipster pastor,
and he was just literally the first time you met him. You called me and you're like, I think this.
Oh, the first time I met him, I was like, ugh.
Yeah, that's stupid. I know. But I remember when he came over to our house the first time, when he walked in the backyard, your face, you were just like, oh my gosh, here we go. Like, you were so against him. Oh my gosh.
Well, I didn't know either that
he's the best
you
man
hadn't
in
really
the
told
world.
him that I was not for y'all dating at first. And then at your rehearsal dinner, I was like, yeah, and I told Masey not to date Caleb, and he was like, what?
I think I'd hint. I didn't tell him the extent. I don't think, maybe. I don't know, or maybe you forgot.
But he is perfect for you. Oh my gosh. And it's cool too because the Lord has even worked it out where, Caleb's not in the entertainment industry. Caleb pretty much hates the entertainment industry. But
he works in that world.
He works in that world. Like, he's in the creative industry.
Yes.
And God has made it though where y'all kind of are working together in some areas.
Oh, it's bizarre how much our worlds intersect.
Yeah,
it's really getting weirder and weirder how cool it is.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So now y'all are in a small town.
Yeah, we're in a small town place.
Caleb is the man that paints the town. He has redone this place. This
Caleb is just, anything Caleb does is going to be excellent, to be honest.
Yeah.
He is just the most creative. He's a visionary. He sees a vision for something and he makes it happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, we live in the coolest place that, what's so cool is when I was in LA, I was determined that we were supposed to live in LA.
Mm-hmm.
I had I was like, I am called here. This is what I'm doing, all this kind of stuff. And I was at church one day and oh my gosh, I was sitting in church and this older man, maybe in his 70s or something, or maybe a little younger, tapped me on the shoulder and he was like, ma'am, I'm so sorry, but I just, the Lord has put something on my heart to, tell you this entire service, and, I can't not tell you if you are willing to hear. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, and this is terrible, but I was like, oh my gosh, this man is going to tell me, I don't know Jesus, and, I need to get sick, all this kind of stuff. I don't know why, but that day, for some reason, I was just very pessimistic.
Yeah.
And this was the most humble, sweetest man ever. And so he was like, if you want to hear it, our prayer team's at the front. And I was like, well, yeah, sure. I'll go hear what, of course I want to hear. And so I went up there and he had another woman standing there because they have a rule of a man can't just speak into a woman's life. And I think that's a great rule. So he was like, you have been a loner for a long time. And he was like, you are about to move somewhere. God's going to put you somewhere that you are surrounded by neighbors and community like you have never known before. And I was like, okay. I was just like,
that's funny.
I remember telling him, I was like, this is so bad. Caleb makes fun of me for this all the time. But I was like, thank you so much. I have great Christian friends. I was like, thank you so much, though. And he was just the most humble man. He was like, you know what? I could be wrong. He was like, but I just I had to tell you. So as soon as I got back to where we lived, Caleb told me he wanted us to think about and pray about moving to this town. And I came to the town, and at first I was very against it. And then I got to know all the people and then just realized what kind of a place it was. And, everything that man said happened, came true.
That's so
everything.
crazy.
And Caleb every day was like, do you remember that guy prophesying over you? And I was like, yes, I remember. And then I ended up calling the church, and I asked them to thank that man for his obedience, because that takes a lot of obedience to, tell somebody something when it might sound, like they might be really against it, or, whatever. And he was just so obedient. And I always remember how humble he was. Mm-hmm. Like, there was no pride in the way he approached me or anything. Like, it was just so humble. And the church was so excited and thankful just to hear the story. So, yeah, that's kind of how we got to the town. And God was so kind, again, to just, like, go before me and prepare of, like, hey, this is what I'm going to do.
Kind of affirming.
Yeah, it was very affirming. And then now, I mean, I couldn't love it more. I've never been more inspired. I thought I would be limited where I am, and it's the total opposite.
Y'all have a really cool town.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's special for sure.
And it is cool too, because you were a loner. Like, you were. You've always been a loner. Yeah.
But
like, I used to have to force you to, like, talk to me, and you know what I mean? Like, I would have to
I've always
force
just kind of
things.
Virginia growing up. Oh my gosh. When anything bad would happen, I would go hide away in my little corner and cry, and I would internalize. Like, I never really acted out externally, but I would internalize everything. And Virginia would always come find me, and she would pull me out of my little corner, and she would make me sit on her lap, and she would be like, tell me what's wrong. She would make me tell her what was wrong. And she made everything better. And that was, like, how our best friendship started.
Well, and that's how Caleb is now.
You know, when I knew he was the one,
How?
He said something like, he was like, when you get in your corner, I will pull you out. And I had never even, like, told him that's specifically what you did. But he knew me. He was like, I know you tend to, like, internalize. He was like, I will always pull you out of your corner. And it's almost like I married you in boy form.
Caleb and I are very similar.
Got some similarities going on.
We're the leader of the pack, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, so now in 2020, 2021 kind of put things on hold as far as, like, your career. I mean, you're still doing things in your career, but you're not flying out to LA and auditioning and actively, like, acting and stuff like that right now. But it is cool how you and Caleb are still being obedient and faithful to, like, still pour in other people's lives and just kind of bloom where you're planted type thing. You know what I mean? Instead of just being like, well, this really sucks. 2020 has put everything on hold. Like, you're still being obedient and doing what the Lord has called you to do. And it's not always in front of a crowd. Like, Caleb used to lead a big thing called The Alternative, and he was always in front of a crowd. You are used to being in front of a crowd or in front of, a screen or whatever. And I feel like this past like year, God has kind of put y'all somewhere where you're, like, being silently obedient, sort of, in a way. I don't know if that's a way to put it. Not silent, but, like, quietly obedient. You know what I mean? And it's been really cool to see. And it's, like, one of those things that God gives us different seasons in life, and we are supposed to be obedient where he's put us and not just, like, kind of pout when it's not what we want it to be.
Yeah.
Because I know, like, you would rather, like, acting is your calling and being in the entertainment industry is your calling, and you'd rather be, actively pursuing that, but you're being obedient where he has you. And I think that's really been cool to see. So another question, or another thing I wanted to talk about is, like, whenever you do these conferences, which you're still doing conferences right now, like, you're still speaking, but it's live stream, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're still flying out to speak, but it's, like, not in front of a live audience or whatever. But you speak mainly to Gen Z, right? Which is, we were looking it up earlier.
Yeah, I was like, what age is actually
6 to 24 is,
that's what it said.
Age
what
6
Google
to
says.
24. Which seems like a very wide range. But Gen Z is who you, like, usually speak directly to whenever you're speaking. So I just want to hear, like, what your heart has been for that generation and what you have seen in them, and, like, what good things you have seen in them, and also how you would want to encourage them and, like, spur them on toward the Lord, and have them maybe be aware of in this world that they're growing up right now. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I love Gen Z. Like, they are so cool. And one of my favorite things about them is that they don't want fluff. and they don't care about that. Like they're like, I want the real thing, like I'm in or I'm out.
Yeah.
And I feel like even maybe millennial wise, like in our generation, that, maybe there was a lot that it was very comfortable in the middle or very comfortable with fluff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Gen Z is just so like, if it's not the real thing, I don't want it. And I love that about them because I just think that's so important. And I mean, that's huge. Something I like desire every time I do get to speak to them or desire to see in them is them to realize and know the spiritual battle that they're in, because they are being bombarded with things that we did not struggle with in middle school and high school. Like they are constantly, I mean, they're being attacked in a different and specific way. And I truly think that's because I heard Jenny Allen say this at a conference that we were speaking at, but that Gen Z is truly like the most dangerous people on the planet spiritually. Yeah. Like they are just I think they're such a force for the kingdom of God, and they're supposed to be a force for the kingdom of God. And I think anytime Satan knows that, the attacks are worse and the attacks are more specific, and he wants to take them down. And I want them to realize, first of all, what their purpose is. Like it can be so easy to be distracted with TikTok, or I want to be a famous this, or I want to have millions of followers. And it's like, oh my gosh, all of that is so fickle, and all that's gonna fade away. Yeah. Like that's not coming with us to heaven. That is, it's not bad to have those things. Hey, if you're killing it on TikTok, go you. Like that's probably fun. But like if that's what your purpose is, you are being so fooled and so distracted, really. And I just want to see them realize and engage in the battle at hand, because they truly, I just believe, can take the world by storm for the kingdom of God. And I think that they're very special. Really, I do. I just always, anytime I think about them, I'm like, those are warriors. Like there are fighters in there. And I want to see them like walk in that and not be fooled by Satan. And I think sometimes we forget, I was just talking about this, but that Satan, like scripture says that Satan is the prince of the power of the air. And that means that he has power in this world. Like, a lot of times we're like, God's in control and like all this kind of stuff. And yes, God's in control. But also we live in a broken world. And we live in a world where Satan is the prince of it. Like you're going to be attacked. There are going to be arrows sent your way. And what are you doing? Are you being on the offense? Like, how are you fighting that? Are you on your guard? Are you putting on your armor? Because it just gets worse and worse. And I don't know. I don't ever want to see them just be comfortable living or like just be comfortable in the world, because you're going to miss it.
And I think we're coming into a time too where we're not going to have that luxury as much anymore either. Like it's almost, there's a sifting happening, and you're either going to be on one side or the other as far as believing in God and not. Because we kind of grew up in a time where everybody believed in God, It
was just kind of like, okay, whatever, I'm a Christian, sure.
But I think we're entering into a time where it's going to be a little more dangerous to believe in God, or not as popular to believe in God.
Right.
And so that, especially that generation and our generation too. And we're really going to have to choose a side. You know what I mean? Like, and as far as like whether you believe or not, whether you're a follower of Jesus or not.
Are you a follower of Jesus or you're not a follower of Jesus?
Right.
Exactly.
Which has always been that way, but it's even more evident now. We're seeing like lines in the sand.
Right.
Basically.
Yeah. And I think that is a cool thing about Gen Z, like that I've seen, is that I love that they just don't care about fluff and stuff, because if it is going to be if it is a time where it gets harder and harder to stand for your faith and what you believe in, then I like that they're either in or out. You know what I mean? It's like there's not really room for the lukewarm of just floating in the middle. So yeah, I just think they're a really important generation.
Yeah. Well, and you even saw some of that living in California. Like out there, it's all or nothing. Like you're either a believer, and if you're a believer, you are all in, or you're not a believer. Yeah. And so I feel like it's going to be like that everywhere.
Yeah, I really appreciated that out there, honestly. Yeah. Like I loved when, like the believers I do know out there, I mean, it was so cool to bond too. Like it was just like only the Lord does. But then no one pretended to be a Christian. No one cared to pretend. You know what I mean? And I loved that, because I'm like, I would rather you just be what you are. Like be honest with where you are. Yeah. And what you do believe in, because pretending's not going to help. You know what I
Right.
mean? So that was an interesting thing because we live in the Bible Belt here. So sometimes it's harder to, some people can just be like, oh yeah, I believe this, or it's not, whatever. But
Yeah, it was kind of like the thing to do,
yeah,
at
exactly.
least it used to be. So if any of you Gen Zers out there are listening, I know we do have a lot in that generation who do listen. That's some encouragement for you. Like, just stand strong and have courage.
Yeah.
Same for millennials. Are we
Yeah.
millennials?
Yeah, we're millennials.
We're millennials. Same for millennials.
Yeah. And something, too, just in that I always think of is like, God didn't just know you were going to live in 2021. I mean, this is the craziest time. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like, what a time to be alive. But also, like, he created you to live in this time.
Right.
And I think that that's so encouraging to remember, too, is just like, you're not just accidentally here. Like, God was like, no, I want this girl, I want this guy to be born in this time because I want to use them in this generation and the the time we are in the world. So I always just think about that because that kind of like sets your purpose and like sets your focus of like, I'm here for a reason. Like, and honestly, like kind of like reminds you of your mission.
Yeah.
And to be very purposeful in the way you live.
Yeah, and who you're going to fear, God or man. That's like
Right.
another thing I have to remind myself of. Who do I care more about? Like, do I care more about what God thinks of me, or do I care more about what man thinks of me? And that is, I mean, it's kind of hard because you're surrounded by men on this earth.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously you're surrounded by God too, but it's harder sometimes when there's something that you can see versus what you can't see with your eyes.
Yep.
But if we have faith in Jesus and we really do believe that he's true and his word is true, then we know that he is to be feared way more than man.
Oh, yeah. Because this life, I mean, James 4:14 says it's gone in a vapor.
Yeah.
Like, this is very temporary.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one day we will stand before God, and we have all of eternity, Yeah. And I think having that mindset of, like, we're just passing through.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to say, Mace?
I don't know. I think that's, this has been fun.
This has been
I
fun.
really love being on your podcast.
Thanks for being on the podcast, Mace.
Thanks for having
This
me.
was really fun.
Like sister time.
Sister. Had some bonding time. We went out to eat with our little brother before this.
That was fun.
He wanted to be on the podcast, but I asked him if he listened, and he said no, so I said no.
He said absolutely not.
I said nope. Mm-mm. Maybe
Watch
if you
him
were
go
a
home and
listener.
listen to all episodes. I'm ready. I wonder what he would talk about. That would be very interesting, though. I wonder what he would say.
Maybe one day, way down the road.
Oh, we love
once
Theo.
he's caught up on all the episodes.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Get a guy's perspective.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Mace, for being on the podcast. This was great. And if you want to find Masey on like Instagram, she's at, are you Masey McLain?
Yeah, just Masey McLain.
Masey McLain. That's MCLAIN. That's our
M-A-S-E-Y.
maiden name. MASEY. It's not Massey, it's Macy.
Or Maisie.
It's not Maisie, it's Macy.
But it's totally
Masey
fine.
McLain on Instagram. All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we will be back next week.